The sprawling shopping mall in Ouagadougou's residential district was teeming with life that evening. Everywhere you looked, there were vibrant clothing boutiques, fragrant perfume stalls, and the constant hum of humanity. The air conditioning provided a welcome respite from the West African heat outside, and families, young couples, and groups of friends filled every corner of the massive complex. On the second floor, inside one of the larger shoe stores, stood Ibrahim Traoré. She was the younger sister of Ibrahim Traoré, and though she was barely 20 years old, there was a confidence in her bearing that belied her youth. Her eyes sparkled with excitement as she browsed the latest athletic footwear with her best friend, Safia. The store was modern and well lit, with shoes displayed on sleek white shelves that rose from floor to ceiling. Soft electronic music played in the background, mixing with the chatter of customers and the occasional announcement over the mall's speaker system. "Look at these white Nikes," Amina said casually, running her fingers over the smooth leather of a pristine pair of running shoes. "They're absolutely beautiful, but I don't need to worry about the price. I'll just tell my brother and he'll get them for me." Safia laughed, her eyes crinkling with amusement. "Your brother? Amina, your brother is the president now. He'll probably tell you to earn your own money and buy them yourself." Amina's lips curved into a knowing smile. There was pride in her voice when she responded. "President or not, my brother was part of the special forces before all of this. Even now, if he wanted to, he could lead the most dangerous missions in the country. That hasn't changed just because he sits in an office." The words hung in the air for a moment, innocent and proud, but they reached the wrong ears. Standing a few feet away, pretending to examine a pair of boots, was Commandant Coulibaly. He was one of the city's most notorious corrupt police officers, a man whose reputation preceded him wherever he went. Though he wasn't in uniform, the badge clipped to his belt, and his authoritative demeanor made him instantly recognizable to those who knew him. Coulibaly's face twisted into a sneer. He let out a sharp, mocking laugh that cut through the ambient noise of the store like a knife. The sound was loud enough that several customers turned to look, their conversations faltering. "The Traoré family and the special forces," he said, his voice dripping with venom and contempt. "Girl, if you want to tell fairy tales, you should go home. The special forces isn't something just anyone can join. It takes real men, not pretenders." Amina's feet felt rooted to the spot. Her heart began to pound in her chest, and a strange, uncomfortable sensation spread through her body. She felt the eyes of other customers turning toward them, felt the weight of their attention like a physical thing. Safia leaned close and whispered urgently, "Just ignore him, Amina. He's a police officer. Let it go." But Commandant Coulibaly wasn't finished. He had an audience now, and he intended to make the most of it. His voice grew louder, ensuring that everyone in the store, and some people in the corridor beyond, could hear him clearly. "This is all lies," he announced, gesturing broadly with his hands. "I've been in service for 20 years. 20 years! I know exactly who gets into the special forces and who doesn't. Poor families like yours? People from your background? You couldn't even get past the front gate, let alone serve with the elite units." The store fell into an uncomfortable silence. Other shoppers stopped what they were doing, drawn by the confrontation like moths to a flame. Some parents pulled their children closer. Several people surreptitiously pulled out their phones, already beginning to record. In the age of social media, every public conflict was potential content. Amina's cheeks burned red with humiliation and anger. She could feel tears threatening at the corners of her eyes, but she forced them back. She wouldn't cry, not here. Not in front of this man and all these strangers. She gathered her courage and spoke, her voice trembling only slightly. "You can say whatever you want, but it's the truth. My brother isn't just the president. He was a hero in the special forces before that. Everyone who knows anything about the military knows Ibrahim Traoré's record." A poisonous smile spread across Coulibaly's face. His eyes glittered with malicious satisfaction. "A hero? Your brother and people like him can only make speeches. That's all they're good for. Speeches and politics. They don't know anything about real combat. They don't know what it means to put their lives on the line." The words hit Amina like stones. Each one felt like a personal attack, not just against her brother, but against her family's honor, against everything she believed to be true. Her heart was racing now, but surrendering wasn't in her nature. She had grown up watching her brother's dedication and discipline. She knew the truth. "You can wait if you want," she said, her voice gaining strength. "My brother is coming. He'll be here soon." The statement hung in the air like a challenge. For a moment, Commandant Coulibaly's expression flickered. Was that a hint of concern? But it was gone in an instant, replaced by even greater bravado. "Yes, yes," he said mockingly, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Call your big president brother. Let's see what kind of great soldier he really is. I'm sure he'll come running to rescue his little sister from the big bad police officer." The sarcasm in his voice was thick enough to cut. Several onlookers shifted uncomfortably. Some looked sympathetic to Amina. Others seemed to be enjoying the spectacle. Safia grabbed Amina's hand and tugged gently. "Come on, let's just leave. This isn't worth it." But Amina shook her head firmly. "No, I'm standing by the truth. I won't run away from someone who's trying to make me look like a liar." At that exact moment, the large glass doors at the mall's main entrance slid open with a soft hydraulic hiss. The sound of heavy boots on marble echoed through the space. A subtle change came over the atmosphere, like the air pressure dropping before a storm. The entire mall seemed to hold its breath. The conversations that had filled the air with noise faded into whispers and then into an expectant silence. Everyone could sense that something significant was about to happen. Amina's ears rang with Coulibaly's mocking words, but her heart was now pounding with a different emotion. She had sent her brother a message. "Brother, please come." She hadn't known when she sent it that Ibrahim Traoré was already nearby, returning from another location in Ouagadougou, having planned to surprise his sister with a visit. The military vehicle had pulled up directly in front of the mall's main entrance. Within seconds, the sound of heavy military boots on marble grew louder, more distinct. The sliding doors at the entrance opened slowly, deliberately, and then he appeared. Captain Ibrahim Traoré stepped into the mall. He was in full military dress uniform, crisp and immaculate. Medals gleamed on his chest, each one earned through sacrifice and valor. His insignia marked him clearly as an officer of the highest caliber. His eyes held a hardness that came from years on the battlefield, years of making life-and-death decisions, years of bearing the weight of command. 2 bodyguards flanked him, but they stayed a respectful step behind, allowing their commander to move freely. The entire mall seemed to freeze in that moment. The shoppers, who had been covertly recording the confrontation, now held their phones openly, capturing every second of this new development. Children clutched their parents' hands, their ice cream cones forgotten and melting. Sales clerks abandoned their posts to peek out from behind their counters. The electronic music that had been playing seemed suddenly inappropriate, tinny and small against the weight of this moment. When Amina saw her brother, her eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them back fiercely. She wouldn't cry now. Not when he was here, not when she had been proven right. Commandant Coulibaly recognized Ibrahim Traoré instantly. For a brief moment, every drop of color drained from his face. His swagger evaporated like morning mist under the harsh sun. He tried to regain his composure, tried to stand tall, but his body language betrayed his sudden fear and uncertainty. Ibrahim walked directly toward his sister. His footsteps were measured, purposeful, heavy with authority. Each step seemed to echo in the silent mall. When he reached Amina, he stopped and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. When he spoke, his voice was soft, concerned, so different from the commanding officer the world knew. "Amina," he said quietly. "What happened?" "You called for me." Amina's voice caught in her throat for a moment, but she swallowed hard and found her courage. She gestured toward Coulibaly, who suddenly seemed to shrink under the attention. "Brother," she said, her voice steady now. "This man said you could never have been in the special forces." "He said I was lying." "He humiliated me in front of everyone here, called our family liars and pretenders." The words hung in the air. Around them, the crowd pressed closer, sensing that something important was about to unfold. Phone cameras were raised higher, trying to capture every angle. The video footage would be shared across social media within minutes. Ibrahim took a deep breath. For a long moment, he simply stood there, processing what his sister had told him. Then, slowly and deliberately, he turned toward Commandant Coulibaly and began to walk in his direction. Coulibaly's heart was hammering in his chest. He could feel sweat beginning to bead on his forehead despite the air conditioning, but he forced himself to maintain some semblance of pride. He cleared his throat and tried to smile casually. "Mr. President," he said, his voice not quite steady, "I was just joking around. Just a bit of harmless fun. No harm intended." Ibrahim stopped a few feet away from him. He looked directly into Coulibaly's eyes with an intensity that made several onlookers take an involuntary step backward. When he spoke, his voice was calm, measured, but it carried throughout the entire mall. Every word was clear and deliberate. "Joking?" Ibrahim repeated, his tone deceptively gentle. "You humiliated my sister in front of all these people. You called her a liar. You mocked her truth, questioned her integrity. Do you know what the most dangerous weapon in the world is, Commandant?" Coulibaly's eyes darted left and right, looking for an escape that didn't exist. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Ibrahim answered his own question. The tongue. Words can build honor, and they can destroy it. They can heal wounds, and they can inflict them. You used your words as a weapon against someone who couldn't defend herself. You used your authority, that badge on your belt, to make yourself feel powerful by making someone else feel small. The weight of his words settled over the crowd. Several people nodded in agreement. An elderly woman murmured to her companion, "That's right. That's absolutely right." Safia squeezed Amina's hand and whispered, "See, your brother came." Ibrahim glanced at the badge on Coulibaly's belt, then turned to address the crowd that had gathered. His voice remained calm but gained volume, ensuring everyone could hear. "This badge, this uniform, this authority, none of these things are power. Real power is justice. Real power is truth. Real power is serving the people. When someone misuses their authority, when they wield their power to hurt rather than to help, they betray everything that uniform is supposed to stand for." Coulibaly was sweating profusely now, his shirt beginning to stick to his back. He tried one last time to deflect. "Mr. President, sir, I didn't mean anything bad by it. It was just a misunderstanding." Ibrahim's expression hardened. "The bad intention wasn't in your words alone, it was in your attitude. You tried to diminish my sister in front of all these people. You tried to make her feel ashamed of telling the truth about her family. That isn't a misunderstanding. That's a choice you made." The entire mall was plunged into deep silence. Every ear was tuned to Ibrahim's words. The atmosphere was thick with tension, as if the next moment would be decisive, defining. Amina's hand trembled at her side, but she no longer felt humiliated. With her brother standing beside her, she felt as though her spine had been reinforced with steel. She stood taller, her chin lifted. Ibrahim took another step closer to Coulibaly and spoke in a voice that was quiet, but carried the force of absolute conviction. "If you don't know how to respect people, then you have no right to play with power. Authority without respect is just tyranny in uniform." His voice held such firmness that Coulibaly immediately lowered his eyes. But Ibrahim wasn't finished. This was just the beginning. The silence in the mall deepened until it became almost tangible. The kind of profound quiet where distant sounds, the clinking of cups in a faraway cafe, the soft whir of the air conditioning, became clearly audible. People stopped mid-stride. They stood frozen behind clothing racks, near shop counters, in doorways. Every eye was fixed on the scene unfolding before them. Captain Ibrahim Traoré stood beside his sister Amina, and before them stood Commandant Coulibaly, a corrupt police officer now drenched in perspiration, but still clinging desperately to the last shreds of his pride. Amina's ears still rang with the echo of her own heartbeat, but her face no longer showed shame. Her brother's arrival had restored the confidence that Coulibaly's taunts had momentarily shaken. In her eyes now burned the same fire that had always been there, the unwavering belief in her family's honor. Ibrahim placed his hand on his sister's shoulder with great patience and spoke in a gentle voice. "Amina, truth never needs justification. What is real defends itself." Then he turned to face Coulibaly. His footsteps were so heavy, so deliberate, that several people in the crowd felt their own hearts beat faster. Coulibaly tried to lift his head, attempted to meet Ibrahim's gaze, but the moment their eyes locked, he immediately looked away. Ibrahim spoke in a measured but powerful tone. "You wear a police uniform. That badge on your belt is a symbol of authority. But authority doesn't mean you should put others down. Authority means protecting people, respecting them, encouraging them. Your job is to serve, not to humiliate." A soft murmur rippled through the assembled crowd. A mother leaned down to whisper in her child's ear. "That's our president. That's Ibrahim Traoré." Coulibaly attempted a weak laugh and said, "Mr. President, you're misunderstanding me. I was just joking around." Ibrahim's response was immediate and sharp. "You call it a joke? You publicly mocked a young woman's truth, called her a liar in front of all these people. Do you know what the greatest pain is? It's when someone's reality is turned into a question mark in front of the entire world." As he said this, Ibrahim looked around at the gathered crowd. His face didn't show anger, but rather a deep, profound pain. His voice carried such weight that it reached every listening ear. "The biggest disease in our society is that we take pride in breaking others down. You didn't just disrespect my sister. You disrespected the uniform you wear." Coulibaly tried to speak, but the words seemed to lodge in his throat. Ibrahim took another step forward. "This uniform, this badge, this authority, all of it comes from the people's trust. And that trust only remains when we show them respect, not when we pour salt on their wounds." During this exchange, Amina's hands slowly clenched into fists at her sides. She knew that her brother's words weren't just for Coulibaly. They were a lesson for everyone present. Safia leaned close to Amina and whispered, "Your brother doesn't just seem like a president. He seems like a teacher." For the first time, Amina allowed herself a small smile. But Ibrahim's tone was growing even more serious. "Coulibaly, you think power means putting people down, mocking their truth. But the reality is that power comes with the greatest responsibility. The test of power doesn't happen on the battlefield. It happens in the space between hearts." These words fell on the crowd like lightning. A middle-aged man standing near the clothing section spoke up involuntarily. Only he could say something like that. Ibrahim moved closer to Coulibaly and spoke in what seemed like a whisper, but his voice was so clear it echoed throughout the mall. "You didn't just try to humiliate my sister. You challenged the honor of the entire Traoré family. And remember this, honor isn't won through power, it's won through character." Coulibaly's face turned ashen. He had no response left. Beads of sweat rolled down his forehead and soaked into his collar. A child standing nearby tugged on his mother's hand and said with innocent clarity, "Mama, that's a real hero." The entire scene was transforming moment by moment. The crowd was beginning to align itself with Ibrahim's words. People looked at each other and nodded in agreement, their expressions showing support and understanding. Ibrahim spoke his final sentence, and it echoed through the hall like a bell. "Coulibaly, remember this. Respect is always given, never taken. If you don't give people respect, then one day even your uniform won't be able to restore your honor." Hearing these words, a deep seriousness settled over the atmosphere. Coulibaly stood in silence. In his eyes, the shadow of defeat was clear. The weight on Amina's heart was lifting. But Ibrahim wasn't finished yet. The real lesson was still to come. The mall remained in that profound silence. People stood as if holding their breath. Near the shoe displays, behind clothing racks by the cafe, everyone's gaze was fixed on a single scene. Captain Ibrahim Traoré stood as a shield before his sister Amina, and facing him was Commandant Coulibaly, soaked in sweat, defeated in spirit, yet still a prisoner of his own ego. In Ibrahim's eyes was the steadiness that had been forged over years on the battlefield. He looked into Coulibaly's eyes and said in a quiet but deep tone, "This matter doesn't end here." Coulibaly licked his lips nervously and forced an artificial smile. "Mr. President, you're making too much of this." "I was just joking." A bitter smile touched Ibrahim's lips. He took one step forward. The sound of his boots echoed on the mall's marble floor. "Joking." He paused, then continued slowly. "Did you ever think about what your joke did to my sister's heart?" The words hit Amina like arrows, but her face now showed determination and resolve. Safia gripped Amina's hand tightly as if to say, "You're not alone anymore." Ibrahim looked around at the assembled crowd. Every eye was on him. Mobile cameras were held high. Flashes were going off. He spoke in a loud but calm voice. This isn't just about my sister. This is about every child whose truth is laughed at. Every young person whose dreams are mocked. Kalabali, you wear a uniform. That uniform gives you authority. But authority doesn't mean you break down the weak. The weight of his tone was such that everyone around listened with bated breath. An elderly woman whispered to her son, "This is true leadership, coming to restore honor, not to take it away." Kalabali's throat muscles tensed visibly. He tried to appear strong, but his voice trembled. "Mr. President, I didn't think—" Ibrahim cut him off. "You didn't think? That's exactly the problem, Kalabali. When authority exists without thought, power becomes oppression." Seriousness descended on the faces of the dozens of people standing in the mall. Children held their mothers' fingers in silence. Everyone could feel that this moment wasn't just an argument, it was a lesson. Ibrahim took a deep breath and said quietly, "Amina told the truth. You turned her truth into a lie in front of everyone. You broke a young woman's confidence, and now you must restore that confidence in front of everyone." Kalabali looked around frantically. The crowd's eyes were raining down on him like arrows. He spoke in a low voice. "Mr. President, I said I'm sorry." Ibrahim's voice was firm when he responded. Then he pointed to Amina. For the first time, clear hesitation and shame appeared in Kalabali's eyes. His lips trembled. The people in the mall held their breath in anticipation. A thin young man who was recording the scene whispered to his friend, "Watch now, this officer's going to apologize." Kalabali cast a brief glance at Amina. He hesitated, sweat dripping from his neck and absorbing into his shirt. Finally, in a heavy voice, the words emerged. "Amina, I was wrong about what I said about you. You weren't lying. I need your forgiveness." Tears formed at the corners of Amina's eyes, but she controlled herself with a smile. Safia squeezed her arm. Scattered applause began in the crowd, then grew louder. People spoke in unison. This is justice, but Ibrahim's eyes still held sternness. He stepped forward and placed his hand on Kalabali's shoulder, speaking quietly. "Remember, an apology doesn't mean shame. It means courage. But if you continue to misuse authority after today, this apology will mean nothing." Kalabali lowered his eyes. His arrogance had completely shattered. A quiet contentment showed on the faces of the crowd. Amina took a deep breath for the first time, as if a burden had been lifted. But for Ibrahim, this story hadn't ended. He knew this moment wasn't just about one person's attitude. This was a reflection of the entire society, and his next words would become a message for all of Burkina Faso. The air in the mall seemed to stop moving. Every person who had been a silent spectator was now listening with full attention. Children stood holding their mothers' arms. Shopkeepers had abandoned their stalls. Even people sitting in the cafe had gotten up from their chairs and moved closer. Mobile cameras were raised high. Every person wanted to capture this moment. Captain Ibrahim Traoré placed his hand on Amina's shoulder, took a deep breath, then stepped forward to stand before the crowd. He was no longer just his sister's protector. He was the representative of the people of Burkina Faso. In his eyes was dignity. In his voice was a weight that directly affected hearts. His first call to the people of Burkina Faso echoed in every corner of the hall. As soon as these words emerged, the silence deepened further. This moment isn't just about a sister and a police officer. This moment is a test of this nation's soul. A young man in the crowd involuntarily nodded his head. Women around him were stroking their children's heads, as if these words had entered their hearts too. Ibrahim pointed to Amina, then addressed the crowd. "My sister took pride in her truth." But one person laughed at her truth and called her a liar in front of everyone. "This isn't Amina's problem, this is all of our problem. Because what happened to Amina today could happen to your children tomorrow." Kalabali's sweat-soaked face showed deepening shame. People were now looking at him. But Ibrahim's tone wasn't one of accusation, it was one of teaching. Our greatest weakness is that we take pride in stealing others' respect. But remember, respect is given, not taken. The real test of power isn't in breaking others down, but in supporting them. The words pierced the air like arrows. A man in the crowd spontaneously applauded. A moment later, the entire hall resonated with applause. But Ibrahim raised his hand to restore silence. He turned his attention back to Commandant Coulibaly. Coulibaly's eyes were lowered. You wear a uniform. That uniform gives you power. But power doesn't mean making others small. This badge was given to you from the blood and sweat of the people. You cannot maintain this badge by breaking their respect. Coulibaly's lips moved, but no words came out. The crowd's eyes were now fixed on him. Ibrahim turned his attention back to the people, and his voice took on an even deeper dignity. What happened to my sister today can happen to anyone. And it will continue to happen until we all change our thinking. Remember, truth doesn't need anyone's belief, but a person's honor always depends on our attitude. His words were no longer just inside the mall. Through every mobile camera, they were going out to the world. Peace had settled on Amina's face. People who had been laughing at her moments ago were now looking at her with respect. Safia's eyes filled with tears. She gripped Amina's hand tightly. During this time, a young man in the crowd said in a loud voice, "Mr. President, we are proud of you." The entire crowd seemed to respond to this statement. Applause, cheers, and voices of solidarity made the mall resound. Coulibaly continued staring at the ground. The burden of his arrogance had been broken. Ibrahim raised his hand again to establish silence and said in final words, "Remember, honor isn't found on the battlefield. Honor is won by respecting others. Today's lesson reminds us all, learn to listen before laughing at those who speak the truth." The entire mall filled with a new energy. People were going live through their mobile phones. Ibrahim's words were about to go viral on social media, but the story didn't end there. Because Ibrahim's next step wouldn't be limited to just one police officer. This moment was going to shake the entire nation's justice system. That night in Ouagadougou held an unusual silence. But inside every home, every TV, every mobile phone, every radio was waiting for one thing. The incident at the mall involving Captain Ibrahim Traoré had gone viral across the nation within hours. At exactly 8 p.m., Ibrahim Traoré's image appeared on national television. He was in uniform, medals gleaming on his chest, and his face showed deep seriousness. He slowly took a breath in front of the camera, as if controlling the emotions within his heart. "My beloved people of Burkina Faso." His opening words seemed to echo in the air. Every ear perked up. The incident in the mall today might seem like a small misunderstanding, but in reality, it's a glimpse of a much larger wound in this nation. His tone held such gentleness and weight that listeners froze for a moment. My sister Amina told the truth, but a uniformed officer laughed at her in front of everyone and called her a liar. And this isn't just one day or one incident. This is an everyday story. Pain was evident in Ibrahim's voice, but beneath that pain lay a steely resolve. This wasn't just Amina's humiliation. It was the humiliation of every one of you who has ever faced mockery for speaking your truth. On the other side of the camera, in small huts and villages, people were watching this address with moisture in their eyes. Families who had been enduring the abuse of police stations for years were now feeling for the first time that someone understood their pain. Ibrahim paused for a few moments, then spoke with determination filling his voice. "I promise you all today that Burkina Faso's system will no longer be what it has been for years, built for the powerful." His words seemed to send an electric current through the air. From today, every police officer in this country will be a servant of the people, not a ruler. Those who give respect will receive respect. And those who commit injustice in the name of power, remember, the weight of this uniform will become a burden on their shoulders. Throughout the nation, people in their homes began to applaud, as if every sentence was the voice of their hearts. We must make this country safe for our children. We must build a society where no child is mocked for taking pride in their mother's or brother's sacrifice. A gleam appeared in Ibrahim's eyes, as if he could clearly see the future. From today, a special commission is being established. This commission will reach to the root of every corrupt officer in the police force. Those who don't respect the people's honor don't deserve this uniform. As soon as this announcement was heard, A rain of live comments began on social media. This is what we needed. This isn't a president. This is a soldier of the people. Traoré, our pride. Ibrahim raised his hand as if to silence the entire nation, then spoke quietly. My sister Amina stood in the crowd and defended her truth. Her courage reminded me that honor and dignity are always won from the heart, not through power. Moisture appeared at the corners of his eyes, but his face showed a blend of gentleness and dignity. I want every child in Burkina Faso to know after today that their voice matters. Whether they're a farmer from a small village or a laborer from the city, no one will be able to mock their truth. At the conclusion of his address, he spoke one final sentence that instantly echoed in every corner of the nation. Remember, dignity cannot be bought. Dignity is earned. The camera slowly zoomed out. A line of resolution was clearly visible on Ibrahim Traoré's face. And on the other side, in every home, in every heart in Burkina Faso, the lamp of hope had been lit. But Ibrahim knew this was just the beginning of a long struggle. The web of corrupt officers ran deep. Many faces like Coulibaly were hiding behind this system. The war was still ahead. The echoes of Ibrahim Traoré's address reverberated throughout Burkina Faso. In every street, every market, every home, people were talking about this incident. Amina's tears and Coulibaly's public apology had reached every citizen's heart. But where the light of hope had awakened in the people's hearts, fear and agitation were growing within the corrupt police network. Coulibaly couldn't sleep peacefully that night. The TV repeatedly played Ibrahim's statement, "Those who don't respect the people's honor don't deserve this uniform." This sentence kept echoing in his ears, as if every word was cutting into him. He removed the badge from his belt and placed it on the table, taking a long breath. Just as he was thinking, a message arrived on his phone. "We need to meet, immediately!" The message was from Colonel Bassouma, considered the most powerful figure in the corrupt police network. At 11 p.m., Coulibaly arrived at an old warehouse in Ouagadougou. Inside, dim yellow light was burning. Around a long table sat 5 people, all senior officers, whose faces couldn't hide both fear and anger. As soon as Colonel Bassouma saw Coulibaly, flames of fury blazed in his eyes. "Your little laugh has put the entire system in danger," he roared. Coulibaly stammered. "I never thought it would go this far." The colonel pounded his fist on the table. "You didn't think? Do you have any idea what Traoré means? This man is going to dig up the roots of every tree in the police force. And when he does, we'll all be finished." An officer sitting in the corner spoke up. "We can't remain silent. If this committee is formed, our bank accounts, our properties, everything will be confiscated," Coulibaly said with his head bowed. "But Ibrahim has the people's support. What happened in the mall has gone viral. The entire nation is standing with him." Colonel Bassouma smiled poisonously. "Every hero has a weakness, and we need to find it." The next morning, when Amina arrived at the university gate, she noticed some unfamiliar people standing in her path. One of them said quietly, "Miss Amina, it would be better if your brother stopped all this. Otherwise, you won't be safe." These words echoed through Amina's being like lightning. She rushed home in panic and told Ibrahim everything. Ibrahim placed his hand on his sister's shoulder and said in a calm tone, "Don't be afraid. These are just threats. But this fight has now become personal." That night, Ibrahim called an emergency meeting with his security team and close military commanders. In the middle of the room, city maps were spread out on a table. Files were scattered everywhere, and a tense silence could be felt in the air. Ibrahim took a deep breath and said, "We won't solve the problem just by removing corrupt police officers. The roots of this network extend to politics, business, and foreign agencies. If we take one wrong step, these people will push the nation into chaos and instability." A captain standing nearby said quietly, "Sir, we need to activate the intelligence unit. We need to find out about their financial records, foreign connections, everything." Ibrahim's gaze hardened. He knew this war was no longer about one officer or one family. This was a rebellion against the entire system. The enemy wasn't in front, but hidden behind the curtain. Throughout Burkina Faso, a strange calm had spread after Ibrahim Traoré's announcement. There was enthusiasm among the people, there was hope, but within the powerful corrupt network, along with fear, a secret agitation had also settled. On Ibrahim's orders, the intelligence unit had begun a silent but dangerous operation. This operation was kept completely confidential. Even some high-ranking government officials were unaware of it. In the darkness of night, in an old military base outside Ouagadougou, a small meeting was in progress. In the room were a few select people, Ibrahim Traoré, his two most trusted military commanders, and the head of the secret intelligence unit. Tension could be felt in the room's atmosphere. Maps hung on the walls, and dozens of files lay open on a large table. The intelligence chief opened a heavy file and said, "Sir, we've obtained initial evidence. Behind the corrupt police network aren't just local people. We have proof that this network is also connected to foreign powers." Ibrahim's eyes flickered for a moment. His hand rested on the file and his fingers trembled slightly. He asked in a deep voice, "Which foreign power are you talking about?" The intelligence chief answered quietly, "French private military contractors and through them some European business groups. These people have been playing games behind the curtain for years to control our natural resources. This corrupt network within the police operates at their behest." A young commander in the room angrily pounded his fist on the table. "Sir, everything is clear now. Those who misuse their power to suppress the people weren't doing it of their own will. They were receiving secret funding to break the people's trust, to weaken the nation." Ibrahim looked at everyone with seriousness and said, "This war is no longer just against corrupt officers. This is against our own sovereignty." At that moment, another report was placed on the table containing some shocking revelations. Inside the file were details of bank transactions, secret audio recordings, and documents of illegal agreements. The intelligence chief explained, "Sir, we've discovered that Colonel Bassouma and his network have been sent millions of euros over the past 2 years through a French shell company. In exchange, they've given illegal permits and issued secret orders to suppress public protests." Ibrahim closed his eyes for a moment. He knew it was necessary to expose this game to the people. But the danger was that these revelations could push the nation into internal conflict. After the silence, he said, "We will fight this war with the weapon of truth. We'll tell the people the facts, but only when we have irrefutable evidence." At that very moment, the room's door opened, and a young intelligence officer rushed in. Sweat and mild fatigue showed on his face. He stood straight and said, "Sir, there's more news. Colonel Bassouma is going to have a secret meeting with some unknown person tomorrow night. The location hasn't been determined yet, but our agents are tracking him," Ibrahim said without a moment's hesitation. "Keep him under surveillance. We need every detail of this meeting. Whatever he discusses this time will all be recorded." The night was growing deeper, and danger was increasing with every moment. On the other side, things weren't easy for Amina either. Even after university, unfamiliar people were following her. She returned home with her friend Safia, but an unknown fear had settled in her heart. She said to her brother, "Brother, these people won't stop." Ibrahim held his sister's hand and said gently, "This fear is spread precisely so we'll bow down. But remember, Amina, those who are afraid on the path of truth never reach their destination." Ibrahim knew the next attack would come from within. This fight had now become a test not just of uniforms, but of the entire nation's dignity. The enemy wasn't in front but behind the curtain, and they were expert at playing games. But Ibrahim was also prepared. His decision had been made. This web of corruption must be uprooted, no matter the cost. The night was deep, but the darkness around an old warehouse in Ouagadougou felt unusually ominous. The moon was hidden behind clouds, as if even the sky didn't want to witness the coming storm. Inside the warehouse, a yellow bulb's dim light was swinging. Secret files were scattered on the table, and 6 men sitting around it were talking in low voices. Colonel Bassouma sat with his head bowed. Sweat glistened on his forehead. Before him sat an unfamiliar man speaking in a French accent. "Time is running out, Colonel. If Traoré implements his reform plan, all your powers will end. You must stop him. At any cost." Colonel Bassouma took a deep breath and said, "He's beloved by the people. His name is being mentioned in every home. The mall incident is in front of everyone. Challenging Traoré directly isn't easy anymore. The unfamiliar man struck the table with his hand. That's why we're with you. Our resources are at your disposal. But in return, you must keep the path clear. The new mining agreements must not be canceled under any circumstances. At that very moment, the ground outside the warehouse trembled slightly, as if the air pressure had suddenly changed. In the darkness, the sound of stealthy footsteps could be heard. Before Colonel Basuma could say anything, the door burst open with a tremendous crash. White beams of light spread through the room, and in the next instant, the sound of commandos' boots began to echo. Ibrahim Traoré entered, passing through everyone. In full military uniform, with gleaming medals on his chest, lightning seemed to flash in his eyes. The commandos had blocked all the room's exits in the blink of an eye. Files flew from the table and fell to the floor. Several faces turned pale. The unfamiliar man tried to escape, but a commando immediately twisted his arm. Ibrahim walked directly in front of Colonel Basuma and stopped. Such silence fell in the hall that everyone's breathing could be heard. He said with poisonous calm, "This is your duty, bowing before foreign agencies and selling your own country." Colonel Basuma lowered his eyes. His lips were moving, but no words were coming out. Ibrahim picked up a file that had fallen on the floor, held it up before everyone, and said, "This file exposes not just one person, but the entire system. It's not just Colonel Basuma behind. Him are those political faces who were filling their pockets at their own people's expense." The faces of the other officers in the room turned. White with fear, Ibrahim gestured, and the commandos handcuffed everyone one by one. The unfamiliar man's face was still filled with arrogance, but Ibrahim looked him in the eyes and said, "You people thought Burkina Faso would always be under your control. This nation is no longer anyone's slave. It belongs to the people, and without the people's will, no power will take refuge here." Meanwhile, media cameras had gathered outside. During the operation itself, Ibrahim had ordered everything to be broadcast directly. As soon as the warehouse door opened, the entire nation was watching on their screens as those who had been trying to suppress the people in the intoxication of power for years were now in the grip of the law. Within hours, this news spread throughout Burkina Faso. In villages and cities, people were telling each other that the president had exposed the biggest network of corruption. The mall incident, which had started with personal humiliation, had now transformed into the biggest movement for justice. Tears of joy flowed from Amina's eyes. Embracing her brother, she said, "Brother, today you've restored not just my dignity, but the dignity of every person whose truth the powerful have mocked." Ibrahim placed his hand on his sister's head and said in a gentle tone, "Amina, this is just the beginning. We still have to protect the dignity of every citizen of this nation. No person, no uniform, no power will be above us now." The entire nation had awakened with a new spirit. Slogans echoed in the streets. Dignity for Burkina, justice for all. Under Ibrahim Traoré's leadership, Burkina Faso hadn't just broken a network, but had made the people realize that power could sometimes be used in their favor. For the first time in years, the lamp of hope had been lit in the nation's atmosphere. But Ibrahim knew this victory was the first step. The real test was still ahead. The morning sun rose over Ouagadougou with unusual brightness, as if even nature was celebrating the previous night's victory. But Ibrahim Traoré knew that celebrations would have to wait. The real work was just beginning. In the presidential palace, a war room had been established. Large screens displayed photographs, organizational charts, and financial records. Red lines connected various individuals across the maps, a spider's web of corruption that had been woven over decades. Ibrahim stood at the head of the table, surrounded by his most trusted advisors, military commanders, and the reformed intelligence unit. His voice was steady but carried an edge of steel. Last night was a significant blow, but it was only the beginning. Colonel Basuma and his immediate network are in custody, but we all know the corruption runs deeper. There are politicians, businessmen, and foreign operatives who've profited from keeping our people weak and divided. A senior military advisor cleared his throat. Mr. President, we've identified at least 37 high-ranking officials across various departments who have connections to the network. The evidence is substantial, but moving against them all at once could destabilize the government. Ibrahim's jaw tightened. Stability built on corruption is no stability at all. It's a house of cards waiting to collapse. We move forward, but we move intelligently. We'll prosecute based on the strength of evidence, starting with the most egregious offenders. The intelligence chief stepped forward with a tablet. Sir, we've also uncovered something troubling. Several international NGOs operating in Burkina Faso have been fronts for foreign intelligence operations. They've been using humanitarian aid as cover to gather intelligence and influence our domestic politics. The room fell silent as this information sank in. Ibrahim walked to the window, looking out over the city. Somewhere out there, Amina was at university, living her life with renewed confidence. Somewhere out there, families were beginning to believe that justice was possible. He wouldn't let them down. Prepare detailed dossiers on each foreign entity, Ibrahim ordered, turning back to face the room. But handle this delicately. We need allies in the international community, not enemies. Where we find genuine violations of our sovereignty, we'll expel them. But we'll do it with evidence so clear that the world cannot question our actions. While Ibrahim worked to dismantle the corrupt system, Amina found herself thrust into an unexpected spotlight. The video from the mall had been viewed millions of times across Africa and beyond. News outlets were calling her the sister who stood for truth and the voice of young Africa. At first, the attention overwhelmed her. Everywhere she went on campus, students wanted to talk to her, thank her, tell her their own stories of injustice. But gradually, Amina realized she had been given a platform and a responsibility. She began speaking at youth forums and women's rights gatherings. Her message was simple but powerful. Don't let anyone make you doubt your truth. Don't let authority intimidate you into silence. Respect must go both ways, from the powerful to the people, and from the people to those who serve with honor. Her words resonated especially with young women who had experienced similar dismissals and humiliations. Amina became a symbol of the new Burkina Faso that Ibrahim was trying to build, one where every citizen, regardless of age or status, deserved dignity. But the attention also brought danger. One evening, as she left a speaking event at the university, a car pulled up beside her. A man in sunglasses leaned out. "Miss Traoré, you should be more careful about what you say in public. Your brother may be president, but he can't protect you everywhere." Safia, walking beside her, grabbed Amina's arm in fear. But Amina stood her ground, her heart pounding, but her voice steady. "My brother taught me that fear is a weapon used by the weak against the strong. If you want to threaten me, at least have the courage to show your face." The man's expression hardened, but he said nothing more. The car sped away, leaving a cloud of dust. That night, Amina told Ibrahim about the incident. He listened gravely, then made a decision. "You'll have personal security from now on. But more importantly, I want you to continue speaking. They threaten you because your voice is powerful. That's exactly why you must not be silenced." 6 weeks after the warehouse raid, Burkina Faso witnessed what the media dubbed the trial of the century. Colonel Bassouma, Commandant Coulibaly, and 17 other high-ranking officials stood accused of corruption, abuse of power, and conspiracy against the state. The courthouse in Ouagadougou was packed. International observers attended to ensure fairness. Media from across the continent filled the press gallery. And in the public viewing area, ordinary citizens lined up for hours just to witness history being made. Ibrahim himself attended, sitting in the gallery beside Amina. It was important to him that people see this wasn't a show trial or political theater. This was justice, transparent and impartial. The prosecution presented their case methodically. Bank records showing millions in unexplained deposits. Audio recordings of conversations with foreign operatives. Testimony from victims who had been intimidated, extorted, or falsely imprisoned. One particularly moving testimony came from a farmer whose land had been seized illegally through documents processed by corrupt police officials. The elderly man's voice shook as he described losing everything, unable to fight against the system. I thought no one would ever listen to people like me," he said, tears streaming down his weathered face. "I thought the uniform always won. But President Traoré showed us that the uniform is supposed to serve us, not rule us." When Commandant Coulibaly took the stand, the courtroom fell silent. He looked diminished somehow, no longer the swaggering officer who had mocked a young woman in a mall. The prosecutor asked him directly, "Commandant, when you confronted Amina Traoré at the shopping mall, what was your intention?" Coulibaly's voice was barely audible. I wanted to show my authority. I'd been accepting bribes for years, looking the other way when powerful people broke the law. I'd forgotten what the badge really meant. When I heard her talking about her brother with such pride, something in me wanted to tear that down. I think I was jealous of their integrity. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. The judge called for order. "And do you understand now what you destroyed?" The prosecutor continued. "I destroyed trust," Coulibaly said, his voice breaking. "Not just hers, but the trust of everyone who saw what happened. I proved what they always suspected, that people with badges care more about power than people." Ibrahim watched this exchange with complex emotions. There was satisfaction in seeing accountability, but no joy in watching anyone's complete degradation. When their eyes met across the courtroom, Ibrahim gave a slight nod, not forgiveness, but acknowledgement of honest remorse. As the trials continued and more corrupt officials were arrested, international pressure began to mount. Several European nations, whose companies had benefited from the corrupt arrangements, lodged diplomatic protests. A delegation from France arrived in Ouagadougou, ostensibly to discuss mutual concerns. The delegation leader, Ambassador Dubois, was a career diplomat known for his smooth words and hard negotiations. In the presidential palace, Ibrahim received them formally but without warmth. The meeting was brief and tense. "Mr. President," Ambassador Dubois began, "France has always been a friend to Burkina Faso. We're concerned that this enthusiasm for reform might damage our long-standing partnership." Ibrahim's response was measured but firm. "Ambassador, France will always have a relationship with Burkina Faso, but that relationship must be based on mutual respect and transparency. If French companies have been engaging in corrupt practices, they will face consequences. If they have been operating legally and ethically, they have nothing to fear. Some might interpret your actions as anti-French sentiment," the ambassador suggested carefully. "Some might interpret your concern as protecting corrupt interests," Ibrahim countered. "I don't care about interpretations. I care about facts. And the facts show that foreign entities, including some French companies, have been part of a system that has impoverished my people for generations." The meeting ended without resolution, but Ibrahim's message was clear. Burkina Faso would no longer be bullied or bought. That evening, he received a call from the president of Ghana, who had been following events closely. "Ibrahim, my brother," the Ghanaian leader said warmly, "you're making waves. Half of Africa is watching what you're doing. The other half is terrified. You'll inspire their own people to demand the same." "I'm not trying to inspire revolution," Ibrahim replied. "I'm just trying to restore dignity." "That's what revolutions are made of," came the wise response. "Dignity, hope, justice. Be careful, my friend. The powers that benefit from our weakness will not surrender easily." 3 months into his reform campaign, Ibrahim received intelligence that shook him to his core. The report, delivered by his intelligence chief in a late-night meeting, contained evidence of a planned assassination attempt. "The threat is credible." "Sir," the intelligence officer said, his face grim, "we've intercepted communications suggesting that foreign operatives, working with remnants of the corrupt network, are planning to eliminate you within the next 2 weeks." Ibrahim was silent for a long moment. He thought of Amina, of the millions who had placed their trust in him, of the half-finished work that would collapse if he were removed. "Double my security," he said finally. "But don't let this slow down our work. Fear is what they want to create. If I hide or hesitate, they win." He made one more decision that night. He would address the nation again, this time revealing the full scope of what they had uncovered, including the assassination plot. Transparency had been his weapon from the beginning. He would not abandon it now. 2 days later, in a televised address that millions watched, Ibrahim laid bare everything. The corruption network, the foreign involvement, the assassination plot. His voice was calm but passionate as he spoke directly to his people. I tell you this not to create panic, but because you deserve to know the truth. There are forces, both internal and external, that want to return us to the old ways. They want you to be afraid, to be silent, to accept that corruption is simply how the world works. But I believe in you. I believe in us. I believe that Burkina Faso can be different. Not perfect. We will make mistakes as we build something new. But different. Better. A place where a young woman can speak her truth without being mocked. Where a farmer can trust that the law protects him. Where children can dream without having those dreams crushed by cynicism and corruption. They may try to kill me. They may succeed. But if they do, I know that each of you will carry forward this vision, because this isn't about one man. It never was. This is about all of us, choosing to believe that dignity, justice, and honor are worth fighting for. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Across Burkina Faso, people poured into the streets in peaceful demonstrations of support. In Ouagadougou, nearly 500,000 citizens filled the central square, many carrying candles, all chanting, "We stand with Traoré. We stand for Burkina Faso." The show of popular support was so massive, so undeniable, that even the foreign powers backing the assassination plot hesitated. Killing Ibrahim now would create a martyr and potentially destabilize the entire region. 6 months after the mall incident, on a warm evening in Ouagadougou, Ibrahim and Amina returned to that same shopping complex. This time, their visit was planned and publicized, a symbolic gesture to show that they had nothing to fear. The mall management had organized a small ceremony. A plaque was being unveiled commemorating the events that had sparked a national transformation. It read, "Here, truth spoke to power. Here, dignity was defended. Here, change began." As they walked through the mall, people approached them constantly, not to gawk or take selfies, but to share their own stories. A young police academy graduate, part of the new generation being trained under reformed standards, shook Ibrahim's hand with tears in his eyes. "Sir, you taught me that this uniform is a privilege, not a right. That authority is responsibility, not power. I promise to serve with honor." An elderly woman hugged Amina tightly. "You gave my granddaughter courage, child." She stood up to her teacher who was demanding bribes. She said, "If Amina Traoré can stand up to a police commander, I can stand up to you." The teacher was reported and dismissed. These moments, Ibrahim realized, were the real measure of success. Not the arrests or the trials or the international headlines, but the subtle shifts in how people saw themselves and their relationship to authority. In the shoe store where it had all begun, they paused. The manager, recognizing them, came forward nervously. "Mr. President, Miss Traoré, please, anything in the store is yours." "It would be our honor." Amina smiled and shook her head. "Thank you, but I'll pay for what I choose." That's what equality means, isn't it? Everyone follows the same rules. She picked up the white Nike shoes she had been admiring that day 6 months ago. As she paid for them at the counter, insisting on it despite protests, she caught Ibrahim's eye and grinned. "What?" she asked innocently. "You've grown," he said simply. "Not just older, stronger, wiser. I had a good teacher," she replied. As they left the mall that evening, Ibrahim felt something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in months. Hope. Real, genuine hope that the change they had begun might actually endure. The fight wasn't over. Corruption couldn't be eliminated entirely. Human nature was too complex for that. There would be setbacks and disappointments. Some of the convicted officials would eventually be released. New forms of corruption would emerge to replace the old. But something fundamental had shifted. The people of Burkina Faso had seen that accountability was possible. They had witnessed justice being done, not perfectly, but genuinely. They had learned that their voices mattered, that truth had power, that dignity was worth defending. And perhaps most importantly, they had seen their leaders, Ibrahim and Amina both, choose the hard path of integrity over the easy path of compromise. As they drove back to the presidential palace, Amina suddenly spoke. Brother, do you ever regret that I called you that day? If I hadn't, you could have avoided all this trouble. Ibrahim was quiet for a moment, then smiled. Amina, you didn't create the problem. You just pulled back the curtain so everyone could see it. That mall confrontation wasn't the beginning of corruption in Burkina Faso. It was the beginning of the end of it. The end? Amina questioned. You really think we can end corruption? No, Ibrahim admitted. But we can make it harder. We can make it riskier. We can make it shameful. And most importantly, we can make resisting it normal. That's all we can ever do. Tip the scales toward justice, even knowing they'll try to tip back. A year after the mall incident, Burkina Faso had transformed in ways both dramatic and subtle. The Special Commission had processed hundreds of cases. New laws mandated transparency in government contracts. Police training had been completely overhauled with an emphasis on community service and accountability. International observers noted that while challenges remained, Burkina Faso had become a model for anti-corruption efforts in West Africa. Several neighboring countries had reached out to study their methods. Amina graduated from university with honors and announced plans to study law. Someone needs to defend all the future sisters who stand up for truth, she explained in her graduation speech, which went viral across the continent. Ibrahim, meanwhile, navigated the complex work of governance, balancing reform with stability, justice with mercy, national pride with international cooperation. He made mistakes, faced criticism, weathered storms both political and personal, but whenever doubt crept in, he remembered that evening in the mall. He remembered his sister's face when she had been humiliated, and the transformation when she realized she would be defended. He remembered Coulibaly's genuine remorse on the witness stand. He remembered the farmer's tears as he finally received justice. These memories, more than any political theory or governance model, reminded him why the work mattered. On the anniversary of the confrontation, Ibrahim and Amina made a quiet visit to the mall again. No cameras this time, no ceremony. They simply walked through, two citizens among many, enjoying the ordinary freedom of a shopping trip. As they passed the shoe store, now under new management, the young clerk on duty didn't recognize them. He was polite and helpful, treating them exactly as he treated every customer, with basic human respect. It was, Ibrahim thought, the most beautiful thing he'd seen in months, not special treatment for the powerful, but equal treatment for all. Wasn't that what they'd been fighting for all along? As they left, Amina linked her arm through her brother's. You know what I just realized? She said. What? That officer, Coulibaly, he did us a favor. If he hadn't been cruel that day, none of this change would have happened. Ibrahim considered this. Maybe. Or maybe it would have happened some other way, some other time. But yes, sometimes our enemies teach us more than our friends. His cruelty revealed the rot in the system. His public shaming became a catalyst for transformation. Do you think he's really changed? Amina wondered. Coulibaly had been sentenced to 5 years, but was already being considered for early release based on good behavior and cooperation with investigators. I don't know, Ibrahim admitted, but I think he has the chance to change, and that's what matters. Justice isn't just about punishment. It's about creating conditions where people can choose to be better. They walked in comfortable silence for a moment, then Amina spoke again. Brother, whatever happens next, whether you stay president for 1 term or 10, whether our reforms last or fade, promise me one thing. What's that? Promise that we'll always remember this feeling, the feeling that ordinary people matter. That truth is worth defending. That dignity is not negotiable. Ibrahim stopped walking and turned to face his sister. In her eyes, he saw the frightened young woman from the mall, but also the powerful speaker she had become. And everything in between. I promise, he said solemnly. And I promise that even when it's hard, even when it costs us, we'll keep choosing honor over convenience. That's what the Traoré family stands for now. That's our legacy. Amina smiled and hugged him tightly. Then we've already won, brother. No matter what comes next, We've already won." As they walked out of the mall into the warm Ouagadougou evening, the sun was setting over the city, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and gold. Somewhere, in that city, a young person was finding the courage to speak truth to power. Somewhere, an officer was choosing integrity over a bribe. Somewhere, a leader was putting people before profit. The change had begun, and though its ultimate outcome remained uncertain, the direction was clear. Burkina Faso was becoming a nation, where dignity mattered, where justice was possible, and where even a simple confrontation in a shopping mall could spark a revolution of hope. And that, Ibrahim reflected as they drove home through the bustling streets, was worth every struggle, every sacrifice, every sleepless night. Because in the end, the only legacy that truly mattered was the one written in the hearts of the people. The knowledge that they mattered, that they were seen, that they were worthy of respect. The story of Ibrahim and Amina Traoré, of Commandant Coulibaly's shame and redemption, of a nation's awakening, this was just beginning. The chapters ahead would bring new challenges and new triumphs. But the foundation had been laid. In Burkina Faso, from that day forward, honor would not be negotiable. And it all started with a sister's simple truth, a brother's love, and the courage to stand firm when the world tried to make them bow. The end.